Hello, all my lovely young raptors. Happy Friday. Although days seem to just blend together now that we're not at school with all of you. Was a great day. We had our teacher staff parade through the neighborhood today and saw lots of your happy shining faces, and it really brightened our day today. And those of you who didn't get to see the parade today, I'm putting together lots of little clips and photos from the parade, and I'll make a video to post here next week so that either you can watch it again or you can see it for the first time. So tonight we've got chapter 6 of Starboy, and then I'll be wishing you a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you again next week. Remember that you can send me an email or send me a message through Teams or Class Dojo, or let your teacher know if there's another book that you would really like to hear read, or if there's any other information, any other tutorials you'd like me to make for you for any technology issues you might be having. Okay? All right, chapter 6, Starboy. The first thing the wind moved was my blood. It ran faster in my arms and legs, pushing against the skin, warning me. I looked east, where the sky was barely turning pink. Instead of being pale, the clouds were the color of dark boulders scattered on a wet beach. The rain, when it came, didn't fall in the proper way, but rushed to the west, fast as a flock of sparrows, chasing a hungry gull from their nests. Soon the fronds of the palms and the grasses in the marshy place behind our house were straining in the same direction. The land tried to flatten itself. It became so smooth that the storm could slide across it quickly without hooking onto anything. I'd been outside studying the sky from our cassava patch, had watched the stars drown one by one, and had felt the pull of the storm's toe myself. Our house, just across the short grass from where I lay, leaned and groaned, begging to go. In a flash of lightning, I saw my father standing in the doorway. His hair was flying in all directions at once. Even his eyes seemed to stretch, and there was worry on his face I'd only seen there once before, the time when the bad visitors, their bodies painted white for death, were spotted in 3 big rafts to the south of the nearest island. My father called to my mother, and she appeared beside him, holding to his waist with both arms. Next her, Morning Girl was excited. "Starboy!" my mother shouted over the wind. She turned her head from side to side, shielding her eyes from the rain with her hand, searching for where I might have gone. "I'm here!" I cried, but my words fled west, too, and never reached her. So I got up and started to cross the clearing to our house. Then I was being pushed, shoved, a giant fist at my back and beneath my knees, and all I could hear was the wail of the hill of noise, the whipping leaves. Sand stung my face, but by squinting I could see Morning Girl pointing in my direction. My father got down on his hands and knees and crawled toward where I was headed, dragging himself forward by reaching first for a stump, then for a rock. Suddenly I was back on the ground, trying to grab onto something myself, something that didn't want to go. But no sooner would my fingers close around a plant than it would break off at the stem. No sooner would my feet find the roots than I skidded forward, skipping like a flat rock thrown on a pond. The rain was before me and behind me and all around me, a thick, crashing wave, and all I knew was water and movement that slammed and hissed and screamed my name. But no, it was my father's voice, changed by his worry, made louder than I'd ever heard it. I couldn't catch the words, just some like, "Fine!" and "Come!" and "Help!" and then a strange calmness. Poured over my thoughts, and I was watching what was happening to me as if it were happening to someone else. I saw my wet arms, my twisted legs. I saw the roof of our house, the yellow fronds soaked a dark tan, become a winged turtle and swim away from the poles. I saw trees, big and small, crash into one another. Yet I wasn't afraid. I kept seeing Morning Girl's face, and I felt the same as she had looked, interested, curious, amazed that such weather as this could be. I watched the way you watch when you know you want to remember, slowly, even though everything was going fast, carefully, even though everything was confusing. In part of me, I found that if I noticed each piece of what I saw, I could someday put it together into a story. Far away from where I watched, my back was scratched, my hip was bounced on the stone, my chest was squeezed so tightly that it was hard to breathe. Far away from where I listened to the howl of the wind mixed with the shrieks of the birds, I knew I was heading toward an area of the island where no grasses grew, where the coral was sharp and dangerous. Far away from where I loved the storm, I realized it could hurt me. Yet there was no time to be scared and too much to see to close my eyes. I didn't want it to stop. To my right there was a large tree, a special tree with fingers that dug into the earth. Usually the higher branches were filled with red parrots. It was a place people sat under during important times. The trunk was so broad and the bark so old and carved that you could find it The trunk was so broad, the bark so old and carved, that you could find in its designs the faces of all the people who had ever died if you needed to talk to them once more. When we went there to look for a new sister when she didn't come home, and there she was, not far from my grandfather. Even in the dim gray light, even with the thunder in my ears, even when I lost the sense to know up from down, I could see that I was coming closer and closer to that tree. Then it rose tall before me, and clear as I knew that Mother was still calling my name, true as I knew that Father was still making his way to the place I had been, sure as I knew that Morning Girl would want to hear all that had happened to me in the storm and be jealous that it had happened to me and not to her, I knew it was the one tree that would surely remain tomorrow in the same spot it had been today. I couldn't exactly move my body where I wanted it to go, and I couldn't exactly stop it either, but by throwing my shoulders to one side, I managed to shift my course a little bit. So I did it again, and the fourth time my hand hit against one of the large tree's fingers. I grasped it, and I held it. A short time later, the wind retreated, as if it were sucking in a large breath in order to blow harder, and I took the chance to pull myself closer to the trunk. I was not alone there. Shells and flowers, even a bird and a blue snake were pressed into the deepest folds of the wood. By making myself very soft, by letting my back find its own way, I fit into a kind of shallow basket that I would have never noticed with my eyes. As long as I kept my balance, leaning toward the opposite direction of where the wind wanted me, I became part of the tree. Another face looked out into the world, watching. With my ears so hard against the bark, I could almost hear the others arguing and joking, chanting and singing to themselves in their own language. The wind was angry that I had discovered how to stop myself. It slapped my cheeks and banged my head and pulled at my elbows. And just as suddenly as it had come, my calmness was gone, yanked away from me. "Mother!" I yelled. "Father, I'm here!" At first there was no answer, nothing beyond the roar. But then, "It's all right, Starboy," came a gnarled voice, coiled as it twisted of knotted wood. "Stay with us and you'll be safe." It was my grandfather, high above me. "It's you, isn't it?" I whispered, and he laughed the way I remembered when he used to hold me against his warm skin and tell me stories about the sort of man I would grow up to be. "I'll visit with you as long as the storm lasts," he said. "You must sit very still, and you must never tell anyone I was here or what I say. It will be a secret between us." At least one person? I begged. You always argue, Starboy, he sighed. All right, only Morning Girl, but she won't believe you. Then we talked and talked. Later, when the rain once again began Later, when the rain once again began to seek the ground, when the palm fronds still attached to trees could only again return to their usual shapes, once I caught sight of my mother running toward me through the tangle of broken branches and heard my father promising her that they would find me soon. I thanked my grandfather and told him goodbye. And with that, I thank you all for participating in the parade today, coming out to see us, and I will say goodbye until next week. Have a wonderful weekend.